Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation, where we push past left and right and get to, guess what? Reasonable. And here's the headline. With all this Trump chaos, this is what he does. Captain Chaos is back. Trump said he sees us having an ownership role in Gaza. Here are his now infamous musings.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site. We should go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts, and there are many of them that want to do this, and build various domains that will ultimately be occupied by the 1.8 million Palestinians living in Gaza. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
The Riviera of the Middle East. Now, here's a little cheat code for you. Did you notice that when he was looking down, he was talking about other people doing this and being part of a collaboration where there would be better homes for the Palestinians in Gaza? And then when he went off the script, it sounded like he was talking about kicking them all out and that he was going to open Trump condos there or whatever he calls the Riviera. There's a reason for that, okay? That's why his staff was shocked. So shocked that his special envoy for hostage affairs, to work with the Middle East, had to go into an emergency meeting. He missed our interview on the show last night because of that. We totally understand. We'll have him here another time. Prime Minister Netanyahu, did you see how he was looking at Trump? Like he did not understand why this was being said. Why? Because this was not the plan. The plan was what was written. I was wondering, I wonder if when he said the U.S., if he mispronounced it and it was actually in his mind, like us, like the Trump family, like when we saw his son-in-law insensitively mention a year ago, hey, that waterfront property there in Palestine and Gaza, it's pretty valuable stuff, I think it may just be an extension of that in Trump's mind, this is could be an opportunity for him. I know that's crazy sauce. I know that's not the way a president's supposed to speak. But this is where we are, and we had an election. So once again, see the game. Here's my problem. It was no stretch for me, nor for Stephen A. Smith, okay? It's not like he's been covering politics his whole life, to see right through this. And that obviously he was talking off the top of his head, and this was not going to be an official position, all right? I don't even see Trump as the main part of the problem with this situation. I know he created it, but everybody knows he was talking nonsense, right? Reporters know this. Why? Because no one from his team ever floated anything like this, and they would have. I have been talking to them about what was going to happen with this presentation with Bibi. This never came up, and it didn't come up because it didn't exist. It wasn't a thing until he made it one. The Secretary of State, the White House National Security Advisor, Michael Waltz. The Secretary of State is obviously Marco Rubio. And Trump's press secretary. We all know what they said. Here it is.
What President Trump announced yesterday is the offer, the willingness of the United States to become responsible for the reconstruction of that area. It was not meant as a hostile move. It was meant as I think, a very generous move, the offer to rebuild and to be in charge of the rebuilding.
He puts some very bold, fresh, new ideas out on the table. I don't think should be criticized in any way. I think it's going to bring the entire region to come with their own solutions.
The president has not committed to putting boots on the ground in Gaza. He has also said that the United States is not going to pay for the rebuilding of Gaza. His administration is going to work with our partners in the region to reconstruct this region.
So it really isn't a question of what did Trump mean? What is the reality? What are we supposed to believe? We know. You saw them backpedaling, okay? We're not going into Gaza. There's no will for that. We got out of Afghanistan for a reason. Gaza makes Afghanistan look like New Jersey, okay? You're not going in there. You're not going to hold it. There's an active terrorist presence. Israel doesn't want you there. The whole thing's preposterous. But that's not how it played. Why? Oh, this is opportunity. My brothers and sisters, see the game. They weren't going to leave this alone on either side. Why? Because this is where the fringes make their money. You think you weren't going to see MSNBC going crazy? You think they were going to handle it the way I am right now or the way I did last night? No, they had to feign outrage, even though they knew he was speaking out of his head in terms of what was the reality. And Trump gave them plenty of reason to do so. Between suggesting America was going to enter the war and that the Gazan people should never come back, of course they were going to do this.
Donald Trump making news in the biggest possible way. The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do it, and we will do a job with it too. A stunner by any definition of the word.
I think it's the craziest idea I've ever heard in my life. 2 million people living in Gaza, a problem that Israel has, and now we're going to have. We want to own Gaza. I don't understand why he's doing this. I think it's the wackiest idea, hard to say, he's ever come up with.
Look, it's an opportunity for them to prove that Trump is bad, and they are better than he. So of course they were going to take it. And there's the reciprocal advantage as well. You see what happened over on Fox? At first they were desperately trying to make it sound like a good idea, the way Walls was, okay? And that Trump is playing 10-dimensional chess. Take a listen.
Maybe Trump is not trying to take Gaza. Maybe this is a grand part of a negotiation. My lesson to the media, this one line I wish they would take: President Trump is playing 4-dimensional chess. You all are playing checkers.
The MAGA Strip. The MAGA in the Mediterranean. The Palestinian Riviera. Sounds nice. There's going to be condos, high-rises, Trump Tower. First, they got to clear it out. I'm not sure. I'm ready to invest.
First, they have to clear it out. Oh, you mean of what? The dead babies? The dead people? This is a joke? You laugh? Ha ha. I'm laughing at the absurdity of their efforts, not at the idea of what was suggested. I think it's appalling. I think it's embarrassing. But it's not new. And what bothers me just as much is that these people with their fake sanctimony and their feigned outrage, he's not playing 4-dimensional anything, okay? He spoke off the top of his head. It sounded like a good idea at the time. It's not what they wrote for him to say, and it's not what's going to happen. And we saw the right do the same thing with tariffs. Oh, we need tariffs. They're going to explode our economy, just like under Reagan when he tripled the deficit. Is that when? Yeah, and we're going to get rid of the income tax. It's going to be great. And then he pulls the tariffs because those were a negotiating ploy. I don't believe that what happened here with Gaza was, but that was. And when he pulls them, hooray, no tariffs, say the same people. Trump wins. Wait a minute, I thought we needed the tariffs, but it's still a win when he doesn't do it? It's all BS. And you are stuck in the middle, reasonably believing that this is all crazy talk. Nothing makes sense to you. You don't understand what these people are doing. And you're right, because it's all perverse. It's all done for effect, for advantage. So then what happens? The right needs a distraction from this Trump gaffosaurus, right? And Musk is also in a little bit of hot water. Why? Well, he's doing apparently what everybody would want, rooting out government waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, WFA is literally an acronym like any other government agency in terms of what you always have to sell to people. WFA, waste, fraud, and abuse, right? It's always there. They just never get rid of it. But how he's doing it, now that this guy who isn't vetted by anybody and has not disclosed what his relationships are with the government, which is weird, okay, and really inappropriate, he may now have access to information that he can use in his businesses. Not okay, and it's not going to stand, okay? But they needed a distraction from that and from the Trump stuff. So just guess what just happens to come out? A story that goes right at the same people who are criticizing Trump and Musk, that all of these outlets that just happen to be outlets Trump doesn't like, they're getting money from the government. They're on the take. USAID. And who breaks the story? All the pod people on the right come out. I wonder who Elon's been feeding this information, right? These are his people. These are his cronies. These are the people who are professional provocateurs, right? Look, let me tell you how see-through this is. And I'm going to take you through the reporting because, look, if people are on the take from the government, a free press has no business taking money from the government. That's easy, okay? And if you can show that, fine. It should be exposed and it should be stopped. But just know this. Let me tell you something about the media, okay? And I've lived this, and you've seen me live it. If there's one thing the media loves to do, is destroy its competition. If you think that the New York Times and Politico and other outlets were on the take from the government and that people wouldn't get that story and go big with it and loud, you're crazy. You think the media would cover for one another? Never. Do you understand? So, what's the claim? Politico, the online political site, was completely funded by USAID, and that USAID paid $8 million to them, and that their recent payroll issue at Politico was because USAID had its funds frozen. That was the first kind of giveaway. The second, right? The first was who had the story. The second was, wait a minute, they just turned it off. They already have payroll problems. Aren't they on a 2-week cycle like everybody else? They also claimed the U.S. government gave the New York Times and Reuters tens of millions of dollars to prop them up during hard financial times after COVID. So what do we know? USAID paid for subscriptions to Politico's energy publication, totaled about 40 grand over a number of years. The $8 million was for subscriptions from 2016 to 2025, and that the U.S. government has spent millions of dollars on subscriptions to the New York Times. Now, pause. If you want to say, I don't want my government buying subscriptions with my tax dollar, that's fine. That's a separate issue. That's not graft. It's not being on the take. And you can say we want a change of policy. We don't want tax dollars going for buying these subscriptions. That's a fine political position to have, okay? Is it illegal, though, for them to do this? No. Is it something more than that? Again, I don't know. I only know what Elon or somebody leaked to these guys. So why make claims that it's the biggest scandal ever, which many of them said? Because these pod people can say whatever they want. They have no accountability, nor do their platforms. Section 230. You can't sue Twitter when someone gets on there and says you're on the take and says things that are literally per se libel and slander. Remember, one thing that you have to balance this out with, though, big mistake. Did you hear from Politico? Did you hear from Reuters? Did you hear from the New York Times? No. Why? They're still living in the fantasy world that they can ignore these pod people and this is going to go away. They made social media more than it deserved to be as a proxy for Vox Populi, the voice of the people, and now it is, even though it's not reality and it's not where the majority of people make their witness, okay? But remember that they didn't comment right away. The next time they play someone else's no comment as a tacit admission of guilt, okay? So you see, I see problems on all sides, all right? Because that's the game, and everybody's playing it, and you have to be aware so you can see through it. That's where we are. All the game of advantage, all the time. They all knew what Trump said was poppycock, but they went with it because it was good for business. So here, let's focus on what they want to be true, okay? That there is a reasonable suggestion here that the region better counter with one of their own. Otherwise, this could be a thing. Again, we got out of Afghanistan and Iraq for good reasons. And those would have been an easier control early on than anything that's going to happen if you go to Gaza. So what would it look like if the United States was going to go in there? What are we talking about in terms of how many men and women, troops it would take to hold? What kind of commitment? What kind of cost? Let's bring in retired U.S. Marine Colonel Brendan Carney, who served in the Middle East, specifically in Israel. It's good to see you again, sir.
Hey, it's good to see you, Chris.
Now, ordinarily, this is the kind of thing that I would discuss with you like 10 drinks in when I'd run out of everything else to discuss with you. But here we are, thanks to President Trump. So if the Joint Chiefs were to get the command, we're going in, we're going to hold Gaza, and we're going to head up the reconstruction there, what would we be looking at in terms of duration of commitment, the amount of troops it would take, and what kind of cost it would be, both in terms of money, but also potentially in blood?
Well, the cost would be extreme in blood. It would be extreme in money. It'll be extreme in time and attention. We're talking multiple years of effort. I mean, just to clear the explosives ordnance that's littering that place is going to be years. The rubble is going to take years to move. I mean, we're talking about a little miniature Marshall Plan it took Europe over a decade to even start showing its strength, and that was with a tremendous U.S. investment. So, Chris, this is is it doable? There's only one country in the world that can do it, and that's us. Do we want to do it? That's the question, because it will cost us an awful lot.
What kind of situation would the men and women be facing on the ground, given the characteristics of the region and the surrounding areas and the ability to produce terroristic and guerrilla actions basically on demand?
Well, Chris, you realize this, I realize this, and I think a lot of Americans intuitively know it without any study. We are hated in that part of the world by a very, very large group of people. They have weapons. They are willing to use those weapons, and any American serviceman, no matter whether they're wearing a Red Cross armband, their clergy, doesn't matter, they will become a target, and I'm afraid that we're going to suffer casualties within days of putting our boots on the ground.
I had one official give me an estimate that you're looking. He says he doesn't know the time. You might as well just make it permanent. You'd have to occupy it. You would need many tens of thousands of people on the ground just to create the kind of perimeter where you would be able to start to control the amount of attacks. He said we would be getting killed early on just from all the ordnance that's been left there. Then you would have a second wave of all the people who are hiding there and underground and are willing to do a one-for-one exchange. And that is not what the U.S. Army wants. That's what paralyzed us for a while, as you well know, in Iraq and again in Afghanistan. And that the losses would have to be in the many thousands. And the cost is more than anything he's ever had to estimate. Does that sound right?
I think so. I think that is a reasonable, actually, in my mind, somewhat minimalist expectation of what the cost will be. And this is going to be an awful lot of money and lives and effort and attention and all those things. And the other thing is, Chris, we cannot do it alone. This is a classic coalition effort if there ever was one.
Well, you saw what Spain said. You saw what other countries said. Nobody wants to do this. And look, let's be honest. This was Trump doing what he does. But when you're president of the United States, there's a price tag. Colonel Carney, thank you very much for your perspective, as always.
All right, Chris. See you later.
Take care. All right, let's get a reaction from people who are worried about the people in Gaza and the obvious and ugly suggestion that maybe they shouldn't come home and what this means for Israel's ambitions, okay? Israel's ambassador to the UN is Danny Danon, okay? And my friend and somebody who knows the situation on the ground in Gaza very well, founder of the humanitarian aid group that I tell you to donate to all the time if you want to help the kids who've been affected by the war, INARA, I-N-A-R-A, my friend Arwood Damon. It's good to have you both. So, first, Danny, your reaction to my assessment of how Bibi Netanyahu was looking, the only word I could come up with was nonplussed at President Trump as he was describing something that I'm sure he had never contemplated before. Do you believe that Israel would want for them to lose all authority and say so in Gaza and America take their place?
Chris, first we have to be grateful for President Trump for inviting Prime Minister Netanyahu to be the first foreign leader to step into the White House after the elections. It shows, the bond we have with the U.S., and we appreciate that. Regarding Gaza, we have no intention to stay in Gaza. We have goals in this war, and our goal is to bring back all the hostages and to eliminate Hamas. And we are focused on those goals. I think President Trump came up with an idea out of the box, you can call it. It's not going to be easy to implement, but I think maybe it will create some talks with other countries, not only to speak about the Palestinian issue, but actually to take action. For years, so many leaders spoke about the cause and to support the Palestinians, but they never came with a plan. They never actually reached out. So maybe something good will come out of it.
Right. Arwa, look, let's take the opportunity when we find it, okay? The suggestion about what happens in Gaza, right? That's the part that's worth distilling from what Trump said. He clearly was saying what hadn't been written for him, which was, yeah, I don't know that they should come back. It'll just happen again. What does that do? How does that reverberate on the ground in terms of the expectations of people in Gaza and who want to return?
I mean, there's a couple of things here, Chris. First of all, Trump is right. Gaza is a demolition site. And then when he starts off saying, the U.S. is going to be involved, we need to clear out the rubble, we need to clear out the explosives, that all makes sense. And then the wheels start coming off with the suggestion that Palestinians are going to have to once again forcibly be displaced from their land, from their homes, and not have the right to return. If there was some sort of ironclad guarantee that there would be a right of return, we'd be having an entirely different conversation right now about what kind of role the U.S. could potentially start playing moving forward. But instead, you have, a president who's effectively advocating for ethnic cleansing, which is a war crime. And when Gazans hear this, after everything that they have been through while they're in the process of trying to see what's left of their homes, clean up whatever they can, figure out where they're going to put up their tent, on top of a very real fear that the ceasefire might not work out and they're going to be subjected to death from the sky once more, to hear the U.S. president say, we're going to force you off your land and you're never going to be allowed to come back, same as what happened in 48, same as what happened in 67, it's psychologically shredding. It's cruel.
Do you think, Arwa, that this makes it less likely that the ceasefire holds because it gives Hamas leverage to say, look, you see what they're going to do to us? You heard the United States president just said it. Even though people like you and me know he didn't mean what he said, the way it came out, but it can be used as propaganda to just start fighting again because obviously you're going to get thrown out.
Look, Gazans have no appetite to fight again. And, I know there's all these videos that are coming out that are showing Hamas parading around and, a couple thousand max, maybe people gathered around them. But the vast majority of Gazans, do not support Hamas and they just want this to be over. So if they actually had a say in these ceasefire negotiations, I don't think that this would be impacting them. But the bottom line is that they don't. Gazans have no agency over any decision that is being made for them right now.
So let's end on this. Ambassador, you're right. You've never seen an American president give more of an embrace to an Israeli leader than we saw with Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he said as much about what this relationship means in the modern era. The biggest message I took from the Prime Minister was we have to finish the job. What does that mean to Israelis?
Well, we have to remember, October 7th was not our initiative. We were forced into that. We still have hostages, dozens of hostages, including babies, in the hands of Hamas. So we will be determined to continue with our efforts to bring them back and to make sure that Hamas will not stay in power. Either we will resume the war or Hamas will accept the reality that they have to move out. It happened in the 80s with the PLO in Lebanon. They boarded a vessel and they left Lebanon. So they can choose. They can actually choose to leave or they will be forced to leave.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Arwa, it's good to see you, my friend, even in these kinds of turbulent times. Thank you for the perspective, both of you. 4 minutes and 5 seconds coming up. So President Trump did something else look, I call it a deliverable, all right? He ran on banning trans athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports. Is it a justifiable initiative? All right, there's a debate on that. Politically, there's no debate. This issue resonated with people. It doesn't seem to make sense. And he was on the right side of it in terms of how the majority of Americans feel. A leading member of Congress with why this is necessary for him to sign an executive order with everything else we have to deal with. Next.
Trump administration, we will defend the proud tradition of female athletes, and we will not allow men to beat up, injure, and cheat our women and our girls. From now on, women's sports will be only for women.
Look, politically, it's a hard position to argue with. The suggestion that you don't want trans women who are my size playing against high school or college kids. Okay. But is that the reality? Well, it depends on how you want to look at it. If one is too many, then yeah, it is the reality. But if you look at the numbers, out of more than 500,000 athletes that compete in college sports, only an estimated 40 are trans. Okay, that's less than like 0.008%. You literally, statistically, you got a better chance of getting struck by lightning. Let's just go like that. You got a better chance of having lightning hit you than facing a trans athlete. So was this necessary, even if it was a no-brainer politically? Joining me now, Georgia Republican member of Congress, Dr. Rich McCormick. It's good to see you, Doc.
Hey, good to see you, too. Thanks for the dessert the other day.
Oh, listen, happy birthday to your son. You're a good man. You're a good dad. Happy to support you. I cannot argue the optics on this. Politically, I get why Trump had a majority of people in the country agree with him. But the numbers are so small, Doc. And you know, I don't have to tell you as a clinician, you're dealing with a population of people who are already very put upon, very bullied. Are you worried that this may do more harm than good?
No, not at all. And as a matter of fact, I have great compassion for people who have mental disorders. And when I went to medical school and when I went to my residency, we talked about this as a psychosomatic disorder, where you think that you're something that you're not, plain and simple. But the question is, when you have somebody who thinks that there's something that they're not, does that mean that your daughter, and granted, let's say it only affects 40 people per race. Do you want the female record smashed? Do you want the scholarships to go to males instead of females? Do you want the awards and the podium to have some 6'4" guy instead of some woman who's trained her entire life for that one moment in time to make the Olympic team? We were at a meeting today and she said, look, we had a 6'4" guy with his junk in the locker room, feet from my face, getting changed in the locker room amongst a bunch of women who didn't want to get naked in front of him. Is that okay? Okay, maybe it's 40 people, maybe it's one person. I tell you what, I don't want that to happen to any of my daughters, and I don't even have daughters. I just think any common sense person understands that that's wrong. We've never in our society thought that this was okay. Not for one person, not for 40 people, not for 100 people. It's the wrong thing, and you just do the right thing when you have the chance to correct a law that's wrong.
This doesn't correct the law, right? It's an executive order. You know you're going to have litigation. We'll see how it goes. It affects Title IX. It affects accommodations. The executive can't do this unilaterally. At a minimum, it's going to take you guys. And I don't know that this is a priority for you guys. I actually thought that the thrust would be government funding for children who are having surgeries that are part of transitioning. I actually thought that would be the place for the administration to make a stand. Why not?
Well, actually, I have a bill on that. And I think that, especially for minors,
that's why I'm asking
less than the age of 18 should not be allowed to get any sort of surgeries or hormones. If you think about that, it's irreversible damage to somebody who's already struggled with a mental disorder. You don't even let tattoos happen to minors. I just think it's the wrong thing. You're talking about a permanent change. You can't undo it. And we've had multiple studies that start with UCLA and people who are trans, who are suicidal. Up to 40%, about 40% of all trans try to commit suicide. And it is indeterminate whether it has anything to do with any sort of oppression or making fun of somebody. They found people who don't even feel that are still trying to commit suicide. And guess what? After they transition, they still have that. And plus, add on that, the regret. We're not solving their problems by pretending that there's something that they are not, and they get that too. Once they do all the hormones, all the surgeries, they still have the underlying condition that makes them feel unhappy about who they are. And that's the problem that needs to be addressed, not some psychosomatic idea that we're going to feed into it and pretend that there's something that they aren't, and that all of a sudden they're going to be happy because I pretended that you're a tiger or a dog or a boy or a 12-year-old or whatever you think you are. That doesn't make you happy. That's a disorder that we need to address, be compassionate for it. And that's all I want. I want common sense, compassion based on medicine and science, not on some fantasy land that we're protecting somebody like it was the Selma Bridge. and that we're turning fire hoses on people and disallowing them to get housing loans and treating them unfairly somehow with the legal system. That's not what's happening here. We shouldn't warp what actually is at hand.
Well, that's the last part is definitely true because, again, I don't think Trump can do this unilaterally. But we'll see because it's going to be litigated. And I appreciate you making the case here, as always, Dr. Rich McCormick. Congressman, thank you very much for being with us.
Always a pleasure.
All right, take care. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Coming up, DOGE is an idea that is, again, hard to argue with. Who doesn't want more efficiency out of government? Again, WFA is an acronym in politics. Waste, fraud, and abuse. But is Elon going about it the right way? And shouldn't we know more about what information he's getting access to and whether he can use it to be competitive and at an advantage in his own businesses? And shouldn't we know more about what his relationships are with the government, what he gets from them, if he's going to be doing all of these things as almost an elected or cabinet level person? We have a member of the Oversight Committee that's part of DOGE, Democrat. Next. Democrats taking to the streets to protest Elon Musk and DOGE. Is it the right move? Today, they took their grievance a different way. They went to the House Oversight Committee, where they attempted to subpoena Musk for questioning, but they were met with predictable resistance from the right, who has the numbers. Take a look.
I move that the committee subpoena Elon Musk to come before it as a witness at the earliest possible moment.
Chairman, I move to table the motion.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Higgins.
You will not even entertain a motion to bring this to the president of the Oversight Committee.
Are in favor of tabling.
Yes, let's have order in this country.
Stansbury, you're out of order. You know you're out of order. You know the rules of this committee. There's been a motion.
Mr. Elon Musk is out of order and dismantled.
He's out of order.
God. Just grandstanding, or is there a legitimate issue? Let's discuss with a member of the committee. Democrat, member of Congress, Stephen Lynch, was in that hearing today, also sits on the DOGE subcommittee that plans to meet for the first time next week. Thanks for joining me, sir.
Good to be with you, Chris.
You know, a little bit of this is on all of you because so many of the hearings have become a circus that the ability to have legitimate oversight has been a little bit beat down, hasn't it? And do you think that there is a real concern with Musk at this point? I like the phrase administrative coup. It sounds, outrageous, but we don't know that we're there yet, do we?
Well, it's obvious that Elon Musk is taking actions that are having repercussions and serious effects on areas that Congress has jurisdiction over. So, maybe he comes out of the tech world where the slogan is move fast and break things. That's not necessarily the same approach that Congress has because we have to deal with, due process and legislative
restrictions. But, he did inform that he did say over the weekend that, he put USAID through the wood chipper. There are 10,000 USAID employees who feel they are at the brink of, being fired or laid off. And so that's a real impact. And I think we have 60 different conflict zones where the U.S. has USAID on the ground and providing support to civilian populations that we need to have on our side to sort of, de-escalate conflict in those areas. I get it. Foreign aid, there's an old saying in Congress that there's only two things wrong with foreign aid. One, it's foreign, and secondly, it's aid. And so it's very easy to whack away at that. It should be noted, however, that President Trump has said we will not reduce aid to Israel, nor will we reduce aid to Egypt, which are the two largest recipients of foreign aid for this country and will be for the next 10 years.
You heard the Secretary of State basically signal that this isn't about Musk. This is still about the Department of State, even though it's an independent agency, and that he believes USAID is very important. Rubio has said it many, many times. Look, I feel like you guys are taking the bait here and maybe to kind of have a point of high dudgeon. You know Trump talks a lot of smack. You know Elon Musk talks a lot of smack. And just because they're saying things doesn't mean that they're doing things. And you are looking like you're countering the takedown of waste, fraud, and abuse, which is very popular with people.
But this is the president of the United States, and this is his assistant, right? So let's just take it from there. So there are 10,000 people in USAID who have been told that they're going out the door. So they've got to look at the disruption. Should they just say, "Oh, he's just kidding"? It doesn't appear that way. It's the same thing with the tariffs last week, earlier this week. When he says, cost of lumber is going up 25%, I get every contractor and developer in my district worried if the bids on their projects are going up 25%. Are their numbers still good? So it causes a lot of apprehension and disruption. And that's, even though he says, "Oh, just kidding," and pulls it back, that disruption is still being felt in the general population.
But that's what they voted for. But that's what people voted for, Representative. People wanted disruption. I just feel like you should just take it to the courts. You know what I mean? If there's a legitimate issue, it's fine. One last quick thing. I just want you on the record with this. It's not an if, we know that this is true. Should taxpayer money be used to buy subscriptions to media companies?
How so? So we get
the allegation of Politico and the New York Times getting money from different agencies, mostly Health and Human Services. It was reportedly USAID, but I think that was a leak that was opportunistic to a bunch of people who aren't held to account on digital media. But if it's coming from Health and Human Services, it's still tax dollars being used to buy subscriptions to different outlets. Is that something that you think should be allowed?
It's questionable. I can say that we get probably 24 subscriptions at the House reading room. That the New York Times, the Journal, Politico, all these others. There's another angle of this too. That since Benjamin Franklin, we have been subsidizing newspapers and print because we thought that was a good idea. So there's a subsidy going out there generally from the government on top of these different agencies, taking it on upon themselves to order these subscriptions. So we can look at it. We can look at it. If we're trying to save money, let's look at it. Is it necessary?
I'm looking for my check, Mr. Lynch, so let me know, because it must have gotten lost in the mail. There's no subsidy coming my way. Stephen Lynch, I appreciate you making the case. You're always welcome on the show to make the case, and I appreciate you. Good luck doing the work of the people.
I appreciate you, Chris. Thank you.
All right, take care. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. What do you think about all this? 844-968-7720. Have your say. Let's get after it. All right, Dusty, who you got?
I got Sally from Ohio.
Sally, what's your question?
All right. When Trump was talking about us owning Gaza, does he really think the American people are that stupid to really believe that we will do that? When we have people right here in our own country that are starving?
Sally, you are putting a measure of thought into this that the president likely did not. You know that stupid expression we hear all the time? Sounded like a good idea at the time. That's what this falls under. This was not what was written for him. It's not what's anticipated, and it's not what's going to happen. Now, did it cause a lot of this, or as my people would call agita? Yeah, it did. But I'm telling you, Sally, I've been giving you the same advice since he won the election. Ignore as much as you can what he says, and just watch what the actions are that are taken, and there'll be more than enough to scrutinize, and we've seen that already. That's my advice. Next.
Okay, next. Kim from Savannah, Georgia.
Kim, what's your question?
Chris. Hey, I was calling to ask you, do you think that we're headed now into that three-party situation where you got the Dems, you got the Republicans, and now we got MAGA? So we got three parties. That's the way. Do you see that happening?
I get what you're saying. I think there's a bifurcation of each party because of its fringe, and I think that magnified minorities, thanks to social media and lazy journalists like me, who many years ago started looking at social media as a proxy for voice of the people, vox populi, as they say in Latin, and it made our job easier. And now tweets are like how we represent where the American minds are, when we know that's not true, that most people aren't on Twitter blowing up my feed. And yet that's where we are. So I think each party's been split in half because of its fringe, which now has outsized amplification. That's what I think. My hope for the betterment of our politics is that people learn that the parties are toxic and they leave them. And state by state, you start giving them less control over your primaries by voting for ranked choice voting and get more moderate candidates that way. And you are an independent critical thinker. That's what NewsNation, at least my show at NewsNation, is built for, to cater to independent critical thinkers. I'm not here for the party people. I don't have a side. I want them both to lose. Next.
Okay, if he promises to talk fast, Jeff from Massachusetts.
Talk fast. Question.
Yes, hi. Chris, I think it's a game that's being played insofar as instead of talking about Kash Patel and all the other people that are being considered for cabinet positions, this is just magic by Trump. He's a master manipulator, perfect, part of the game, but I believe that we're not talking about what we should be talking about, and we're distracted, and that's his magic.
You know who that's on? Us, Jeff. Because if you see it and you still participate in it, then who's the problem? You see what I'm saying? That was my message tonight. And look, here's the kick in the groin about all of it for me. It's way easier to pick a side. You're going to have more of a following. I'm going to get more ratings. There's going to be more revenue if I pick a side. And that's why people do. And that's why they cover the chaos, because it works. But I think it's alienating American people from their government, from their politics, and from each other. And so as long as I can, I'm going to fight against it. We'll be right back.